So let's take another look at government's role. We saw how it fit in our circular flow diagram in the last segment. Okay. We know that we're looking at the best interest of the consumer, we're looking for laws and regulations, so we want to make sure that that's all focused in to protect the other 5 characteristics of capitalism so that we make sure that we are functioning in a capitalist economy. Now, we talk about government, let's make sure we understand this. Right? The only actual law that everybody in the United States voted for was our Constitution when it finally got passed. Right? Our Constitution, with all of its different articles and everything through, was the only law that we passed. After this, we elected folks to pass laws for us, so they vote on them. Now, if we want to change the Constitution, we actually have a way to change it. In here, they talked about that. And as long as we do that, we're set to go. So that's the first part. The Constitution is the law that our government follows. Now, there are 3 sections to this, and the Constitution wasn't set up to tell we the people what we can do. The Constitution was set up to restrict what the government could do. So that's why we mean best interest of the consumer and small, right? Restrictions. Now, we do have 3 branches. We have the president, the executive branch, the Congress, the legislative branch, and, of course, the judicial branch. The Congress passes laws. The laws Congress passes, the president enforces. And if there is a difference of opinion between the president and Congress, the Supreme Court or the judicial branch goes ahead and decides which one is right. And what the Supreme Court looks at is whatever arguments or whatever laws or whatever that these two are doing, how does it work with the Constitution? Because it's a restriction. And anything not specifically in this document, the states decide what goes on. That's actually also in that Constitution. So this is kind of an idea to go ahead and see how things run, because there's a lot of confusion sometimes when we go, well, the government does this and that and this and that. Well, this is how they are supposed to work. Right? Now, Congress passes laws. The House of Representatives has a 2-year term, and the Senate has a 6-year term. These two make up Congress. Representatives was a popular vote. The Senate used to be appointed by the state legislatures. And the 17th Amendment got away with that. Got away with it and said, hey, let's do that by popular vote too. Well, the reason that our framers wanted the legislatures of the individual states to appoint the senators is because then you'd have direct state representation. Because if the states didn't like what was going on in the Senate, the legislature can just recall. You don't need a vote for the whole state. You just need the legislature to say, get their majority. This guy's no longer a senator. Boom, pull him out. She is now our new senator. Boom, put her in. That gave states a lot more control, or basically protection, in Congress. Well, we don't have that anymore. That was taken away when we did the 17th Amendment, because everybody thought popular vote would be great. Now we have senators that are in there for 50 years. Okay? So, 2-year term, 6-year term, both of them by popular vote. Now the president enforces the laws, 4-year term, elected by the Electoral College. And that part's really simple. That's to make sure that the president actually is in power for all of the country. Now, example, if Florida, New York, Illinois, Texas, and California got together, and New Jersey, so it's 6 states, if they got together and by popular vote elected a president, those 6 states would control all 50. So the other 44 states, it didn't matter what you want. If it was different from what those 6 states wanted, those 6 states rule. And you just get whatever they give left over. This is the reason for the Electoral College, so that can't happen. Or let's say the entire South votes this way, or the entire East Coast votes this way, or the entire West votes this way. It's to set up so that the president is actually for all the country, not just a part of the country, and then the rest of the country hates what's going on. So that's the reason for the Electoral College. And then, of course, we have the Supreme Court. Right? They decide the laws, nominated by the president, confirmed by the Senate, and then they have, nobody can touch them. They're in there for life. Some folks say, well, maybe they shouldn't be for life. Maybe at like 75 or 80, they should go ahead and be taken off the court, but there you go. Now, why the House has a 2-year term? Because they're the ones that vote where the money goes. The House or the Senate doesn't, the president doesn't. Those two can request that the House put this in there. But unless the House actually votes for where money goes, the money doesn't go anywhere. The Senate is kind of a wet blanket, you might want to say. If the whole country is all of a sudden, oh, we got to do this right now, and for some reason, and it could be or couldn't be a bad law, but it's emotion takes over, and we pass this law. The reason that the House would pass that law is they know that they're going to be elected in 2 years. As a matter of fact, once a new representative gets to the House of Representatives, they're basically part of their job is getting reelected because they only have 2 years and that comes by fast. So that's why the House is 2 years. The Senate being 6 years is they can go ahead and say, whoa, slow down. Everybody's taken over by emotion. Let's take a really good look at this and see whether it's actually doing what it's doing. Case in point, the coronavirus bill, the first one that's passed to put where the money's supposed to go, and it passes the House, and there's a lot of objections, but there's enough votes to pass it. It gets to the Senate, and the Senate goes, well, wait a minute, you're making some of these programs permanent instead of just for the life of the virus. So we're going to go ahead and use an emergency to put something permanent that's going to cost a lot more money and add a lot more government regulations. Also, the money isn't actually going to the people that need it. It's going to the government, and the government will decide it instead of, say, reducing the payroll tax or getting rid of it for the life of the virus. That would raise everybody's paychecks by over 15%. So you'd be getting 15% more in your paycheck because you're not having to pay that money to the government. So those are some of the things that go to the immediate people that the Senate looked at. And the permanent programs, they're going, why permanent? Right? Is it something we're trying to slip in so we can do something just because the emotion is we have to do something? So let's slide something in to make it happen. Kind of like when they did the, stimulus bill back a few years ago. Do you know that we actually paid like $5 million to build a turtle tunnel? Yeah, turtles, the big things, shells. Turtle tunnels on I-10 somewhere in the west part of Florida. Okay? Because turtles were getting crushed on the freeway. Now, I don't know if they hired turtle crossing guards or turtle herders so that they could herd the turtles under the tunnel, because I'm not sure turtles can read, or if they'd use the tunnel if the freeway's there anyway. But we did it because, we have to get the country back up and we need this, and everybody just threw everything in. So the Senate's supposed to take a good look and stop that kind of stuff from happening. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. So that kind of gives you an idea of how and why for the different lengths and stuff like that and what they do. Now, how we pass a law. Now, it can be passed in either house. Remember, if it has to do with money, this bottom part here is the House of Representatives. They're the only ones that actually have to pass money. They can put a bill in that says we want to spend money for something, but theirs isn't going anywhere unless the House also has one. So what they'll do is they'll pass a bill and it'll come down and it'll go to this committee, it'll go to this committee, it'll go to this committee. Now once it gets here, they can just say, well, we don't want to do it anymore, and that's what they call table. If they want to continue out, it goes to this committee, it gets reported out, and then the Speaker of the House has to put it on the calendar. Or they table it and it doesn't go anywhere. Then it goes to the debate, it gets voted on, it's called an engrossed bill, and it goes to a conference committee because once the bill is heading this way, normally there's another bill in the Senate doing the same thing, and vice versa. So they'll do the same thing. It gets drafted, gets put in, it could be tabled here, it's reported out. If the majority leader doesn't put it on the calendar, it's tabled again. It can go to the floor, it can be filibustered. And again, it's tabled again. Or it can go to the full vote. It finally gets this conference committee where both of them work it out, and then both sides vote on the compromise bill. Then it goes to the president, who can veto, sign it. If he signs it, it's a law. If he vetoes it, if both houses do a 2/3 majority, it becomes law. If they don't, it's done away with. Think about how long this takes. Both houses and the president have to do this. It's hard to get something through right away, but it can be done. All right, so we know that, so let's actually take the roles and problems part. Roles. Establish the rules of the game. Remember, it's the referee. What are the laws? What are standards? How do we use money? It maintains competition. It doesn't allow everybody to gobble everybody up. Because if they do, we'd under-allocate resources, such as we don't have a whole lot of companies that make masks. Remember, we had the coronavirus. Everybody was looking for a mask. We didn't have any. Why? We didn't have a whole lot of companies. And the ones that did weren't producing too much. Under-allocated resources. We also redistribute income. These are the transfer payments, market intervention, and taxation. Remember, market intervention, most of the time not good, because every time they do that, they're interfering with the invisible hand. They will reallocate resources, though, for kind of like the wrong amount of stuff being produced, such as college graduates. That's you guys. State of Florida pays 75% of the tuition of everybody going to a Florida State college if you're in-state. Out-of-state has to pay 4 times the tuition that you guys are paying. So the tuition you're paying, multiply it by 4, that's what you should be paying. Now here's the key. If it was 4 times that, would you be going to college? Probably not, or at least it would be a heck of a lot more extended. Now, why does the government need college graduates? Well, college graduates, smarter, not necessarily, common sense type, but they're more educated. Businesses from out of state look for where they can put their business. So if they see a state with a highly educated workforce, they may move their stuff to that state from other states. Which means college graduates are going to bring business into the state. College graduates are going to make more money, which means over the long term, for 2 to 4 years, they may give you, this amount of money for tuition, but then for the next 40 years, you're paying this amount of money in taxes. And why in-state and not the out-of-state? If you're coming into Florida, with some exceptions, you have to be here a year before you can get in-state tuition. Here's why. They want you to stay in Florida. If you are living in Georgia and just commuting to FSCJ, what are the chances of you staying in Florida when you graduate? Probably none, because you are situated in Georgia. So you are going to help the Georgian economy, and all the money the state of Florida used for your tuition went to the state of Georgia, and they're not getting repaid. So they want you to come here, be here for at least a year. You've made friends, you've settled down. Now you got another year, a couple of years in school that you've been here. You really have everything here. Your chances of leaving the state, hardly any at all. So that's what they mean by reallocating resources. And of course, to stabilize the economy. Full employment, stable price levels. And in macroeconomics, we get into this deeper. Now, they also have some rights that they can do. In other words, they can coerce, or they have the right to enforce compliance to laws. Okay? You can't go into a bank and rob people. Okay? You can't go ahead and just drive however way you want, and you can't take stuff away unless it's for the good of the whole people as a whole, and that's what we call as eminent domain. Somebody is living where they want to bring a freeway through, they're going to take your property, pay you the fair market value, and turn it into a freeway. They also can correct market failures. Again, we got to be careful about this because we don't want to mess around with the invisible hand, but they have the power to do that. And they can lower what they call private sector risks, such as if a veteran, a woman, certain minorities want to open up a business, that the government will go ahead and guarantee the loan that they get, which kind of lets the bank go, okay, I'm not going to lose my money if they go ahead and go under, I'm going to get it. If you're going to go ahead and get a house, a veteran can get it for no money down. But the government guarantees the loan, so the mortgage company will go ahead and make it. So it's less risk for the bank, the vet gets the home, and the bank's okay with the loan. Now, there are also some problems that lead to failures. One of the problems, when government gets involved, limited or no invisible hand, all right? Remember our good old pigs that they went ahead and took care of. Massive size and scope. Our current government, 4.3 million people and over 500 different agencies in our government right now. Hard to get through. Remember that picture of the Affordable Care Act? Every law that goes through has something that looks like that. But we need the bureaucracy, so we're going to need to pay those salaries. Why do we need it? Because something has to govern the 100 senators, the one president, the 530 or 435 representatives cannot enforce and or run the country. So that's what we needed bureaucracies for. So we do need that. But it then creates paperwork, and that creates inflexibility. In other words, if you're here filling out a document and the worker, oh, you forgot to do the I and you forgot to cross the T and you left this word out. If they did that for you, they'd have to do it for everybody. And it would take much longer to get stuff done. So you fill out the paper, they see the paper. If it doesn't work, it goes into the return process. And sooner or later, you get it back so that you can redo it. Right? Inflexibility, because if they're not the same for this person and this person, then we're discriminating against somebody for some reason. All right? So, we also have the information aggregation problem, or remember when we had the talked about socialism, and we talked about the first problem on there, right information to the right people at the right time for an efficient decision, or in that case it was to get the job done. Same problem goes here. 4.3 million people going through the government process. Some things can get lost, misplaced, misunderstood. Which leads to a lack of accountability, because it's a whole system. When there's a problem, people can go, they did it. So we have a problem with that accountability. So here's the problems. Here's the rights and here's the roles. Now, even with these problems, the government works. right? Think of all those people, even the ones, when you have a super political confrontation, right? President Trump won in 2016, and we had all those Hollywood actors and actresses going, oh, if he wins, I'm moving out. They didn't move. Why not? Because there's no better country. Even with somebody they absolutely detest in the White House, there's no better country to live in than the United States. So we can talk about problems, and we're going to talk about some failures in a minute, but we're the best in town. The rest of the world doesn't have stuff like we have. Now, government failures. Well, we talked about price ceilings and price floors already, so we know that's in there. But let's take a look and flip over the sheet or get the other one that you have. And we're going to start with the upper left-hand corner. This is what we call the principal agent problem. The congressman gets elected. The senator gets elected. The president gets elected. Who do they represent? Do they represent the voters that voted him into office, or do they represent the people that gave them the money to get into office? This can be a problem. The second one, unfunded liabilities. All right, this means we pass a law and we say we're going to pay for it later. All right, it happens all the time. We say our debt's like $22 trillion. It's actually like $100 trillion if you threw all the unfunded liabilities in. The third is clear benefits with hidden problems. This is the one where it looks great in the short run, but down the road, there's all kinds of other problems it causes. Chronic budget deficits. All right, this creates inefficiency. If we keep having deficits, we're having to pay interest on money. That money, that is our tax money, is going to somebody else. It's not going to what we think it should be going to because we have budget deficits. And it kind of gives you an idea. Deficits, surplus, deficits. Here's the $1 trillion. We're going to get the $1 trillion again this year. And it can lead to a debt crisis. Now, it hasn't in our country yet. But sooner or later, somebody says, we don't think you're going to make it. You can't pay the bills. Like they did with Greece. Right? Greece is a very big point of taking a look at what happens when we have a debt crisis, when investors lose faith and countries can't borrow money. We also have what we call rent-seeking behavior. Literally, it looks like somebody spent all the money for somebody to get elected, go to Washington, D.C., and whatever the money loaner or the money lender wants that person to do, they do. We call this basically you rented a congressman for two or 6 years. If it was a senator, 4 years if it was a president. There's also misdirection of stabilization policies. Each political party wants to go different directions. One wants less government, one wants more government. One wants more capitalism, one wants more socialism. It's great if you were just going in one direction, but what happens if you're going, hey, this group is going more socialist, and all of a sudden you turn around and now we're going more capitalist? All the laws that were passed and all the ways that the economy was going now switch 180 degrees. That's that fiscal and monetary policy we talk about. Limited and bundled choices. Now, I know in the 2016 election there were 29, I believe, 29 political parties here in the state of Florida alone. We normally only hear about the Democrat, the Republican, sometimes the Libertarian, but there's a whole heck of a lot more. But we take a look at Republican and Democrat because those are the two big ones. Everybody says if you vote for somebody else, oh, you just lost your vote. Right? It's your vote to do what you want to do with it. But we're limited. And in the 2016 election, we had Hillary and, I forget Kane's first name, and we had Donald and our vice president. Pence, forget his last name, or first name. So we had a choice of one group or the other. We don't get to pick amongst these four. We get these two or we get those two. And think about this, in the first several elections, the one that got the most electoral college votes was the president, and the one that got the second most was the vice president. Could you imagine President Trump and Vice President Clinton? That would have been an interesting cabinet to watch for 4 years. Right? But limited and bundled, meaning that this is what we get. We can't choose anybody else because of the political party system. Now, we already talked about the bureaucracy and inefficiency. Remember, government doesn't have to worry about profit, and they can go ahead and mess with the invisible hand. Inefficient regulations and intervention. All right. Solyndra is probably the biggest one of this one. We went ahead and guaranteed Solyndra a loan for a certain period of time. The idea being, now Solyndra was doing solar panels. Now it's a new setup, it's alternative energy, everything was great, but China was selling them for about $100 a panel. Solyndra said, well, we're going to need help, in other words, a subsidy, a loan, for like 2 or 3 years so we can go ahead and build up where we can compete with the Chinese. Well, after the couple of years were over, Solyndra couldn't. They could still only sell theirs for $300 a solar panel. So they ended up going into bankruptcy and they're no longer a company. We intervened in the market to do that. And then, of course, there literally is corruption. Actually a bribe. About 15 years ago, if I recall right, I actually remember hearing of a representative. He was caught in an FBI sting. They gave him $50,000. And where did he hide it? In aluminum foil in his freezer. So when they went to search his house, there it was. Okay, sometimes we do not elect the best and the brightest either. Remember that limited and bundled choices. All right. So, historically, never works. Let's take a look at a different type of government. Here's China. All right. First off, these folks here, these are the million Muslims in northwest China. This is one of the detention camps that they're in. They literally like this. They're being re-educated. This over here, China wants to go ahead and make sure they actually have really, really good idea of what's going on in their population. This is facial recognition. All of these numbers up here, that's their personal social score. Okay, so by face recognition, you can find out how good a Chinese communist they are. And that's literally what it is. How good a Chinese communist? How well do they support the party? They're putting it in the system now, and they're hoping to have it all done by the end of 2020. Public videos are warning all to behave or you get punished because you get a lower score. What happens when the score goes down? Well, it doesn't work like your credit score that you can make it better. It's your behavior. What can happen? You can't borrow in China. You can be restricted in your travel. Right now, about 9 million can't fly domestically in China. You can have internet, but with reduced speeds. Your family can be banned from the best schools. You can stop. They can stop you from going or getting the best jobs. They can keep you out of the best hotels. They can actually get your dog taken away from you. Okay? And you can be named a bad citizen in public, literally in public. And of course, one of the benefits, besides not doing all of that, if you have a higher behavioral social score, you get more matches on their dating sites. Okay? That was kind of weird, but those are some of the things that go with the personal social score in China. But think about that. Think about the re-education camps. That's what China is like. All right. Now the government does nudge us. Not nudge us in this way, because this is nudging. Right? They want you to behave in a certain pattern. But we do get nudged in other ways. So here's your nudging paper, and you'll find this in the module. Again, there's the directions up on top. Read the article. Remember, section 1 are going to be the 8 key facts that you find in here. Here's the article questions. There's 3 in here, there's 3 in here, and there's 1 here, 1 here, 1 here. Now, the difference is these don't exactly have to do with the article. Right? But the key points in here are going to help you answer some of these things here. This is going to be about you, so I want you to take a look at it. Then, of course, section 3, the professor's questions. And this, why is what you learned specifically important to you? I want you to think about this question as being the aha question for you. All right, that goes ahead and ends this section.